graduated, elevated. Now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Major moves, power moves, take it to the top one time, non-stop.
Hello, I am Noma Mguni. I am the host and founder of Ph.D. hardtalk. Today I'm going to talk to you about the key skills that you need in order for you to thrive during the first year of your PhD. So number one is time management. I know there's so many apps and people use Trello and all these other fancy things to ensure that they do what they need to do. I'm a classic girl. What do I like? I like pen, paper, write down my list, and then I like to, just tick it off. I enjoy that, or just draw a line. I enjoy that. Makes me happy. I feel like I've achieved what I set out to achieve, but not everybody's like me. So find what works for you and stick to it, right? In terms of your project plan, again, be realistic. Life happens during your PhD. And often we forget that life is just life and it keeps on ticking. Whether you're reading, whether you're blocking people or your phone is do not disturb, life just happens. So you have to cater for life during your PhD. So don't be in such a hurry. I want to break all records. I want to do all of this. I can do my PhD in 3 months. I can do this. You will stress yourself out because life will just happen. So sit down and think about your project plan. What do I want to achieve in my first year? What do I want to achieve in my second year? And what do I want to achieve in my final year? Or in my final year if you're in fourth year, essentially, right? And then when you sit down, think about life. So for other people, maybe they want to have children. Other people tend to plan to say before, during defense, obviously, was that trying to have our family, or after when I've got my title, that's when, I want to then have my baby, right? Other people, they'll say, first year or second year, I want to have a baby. Think about all those things and make a decision that works well for you and your family. But also think about, the wider family. That could be parents, anything can happen, illnesses, changes with your siblings, albeit divorces, etc. So think about life and be realistic in that sense during your project planning. And then going back to your first year, I always say this, which is read. Why should you read? So reading will help you with your writing confidence. So if you can see how other people articulate their arguments, their thoughts, and build on in terms of, their theoretical framework, you'll be able to then emulate that in your own writing. Now, it's easier said than done because I've had that feedback as well. Where do you get that from? Well, great idea, but where do you get it from, right? So by reading, you will build that confidence and you'll be able to defend your thoughts as well, because where do you get it from? And you'll be able to identify how other authors in your field have stated, during recommendations in terms of their blind spots, all of that stuff, you'll be able to pick it up by reading, essentially. And there are self-guide books in terms of how to write a PhD thesis, how to write at level 8. Again, it always goes back to, we can't hear your voice. So then how do you learn about finding your voice? It's through reading, attending webinars, and also communicating with other PhD colleagues, because maybe one of them has been told the trick. What is the trick, right? Maybe they have. And then they'll be able to share with you and say, do A, B, C, D, and this will make your life easy. But it's through communicating, it's through networking, and also thinking about your project plan. So every time you hit a milestone, just check in terms of your project plan and see if you're still meeting your key milestones. Because what you don't want is to be in shock during your third year and you're racing to the finish and you've still got loads and loads and loads of stuff to do, which happens, life just happens. As I said, we plan for it, but life just comes through, right? So going back to the reading, your literature review, start thinking about what kind of a literature review you want to write. But as you're reading as well, read literature reviews and see how they're written. So go for top tier journals, mid, and also go for the ones at the bottom, you know, the ones no one's heard of. Again, that will help you to see, you know, in terms of what is acceptable, what isn't, and then you find your stride, as they call it, and you start to work on your muscle to get to a point whereby you're writing at level 8, right? And that is a challenge, because obviously I've spoken to my colleagues and my friends as well, and we're all like, yeah, level 8 is a bit of pressure. But, you know, if you watch Dr. Catriona Ryan, she explains in terms of writer's anxiety and what one could do essentially to help themselves to become a better author. And also to, you know, I think she touched on something which was, well, a thesis, you look at it and you get so panicky, but it's actually a dissertation. Like if you take chapter 1, it's one dissertation, chapter 2 is another dissertation, and you can work through it, and then you get so excited, or look at it like a book chapter or something. You get excited because you're like, oh, look at me, you know, I've done that. It might not work for everybody. I'm not saying this is the only way, but again, think about your timeline, and then think about life, and then work on the skills that you need to work on during your first year, because this will make your life so much easier going to second and third year. Now, reflections from Noma Mguni. When it comes to software that you need to use in order to analyze your data, again, don't wait till the last minute and be like, I need to learn, because you'll be on panic mode 24/7, and that's not healthy. And you know, I do say that I've got 5 grey hairs out of this PhD. I never had grey hair, and since I started, you know, I seem to be getting more grey hair. I don't know if that's wisdom or it's stress or it's just life, you know, who knows. But mother doesn't have grey hair, so it could be stress or just life, right? Or the PhD. But, you know, think of, you know, the software that you want to use, and start reading on that as well, as a break from your literature, secondary literature reading. Because again, you don't want to spend so much money when most people are self-taught anyway in your field. So you can teach yourself how to use some of these softwares. I know sometimes you'll be thinking, oh, this is impossible, I can't, you know, I just can't do it. Just brace yourself, be strategic, add that onto your project planner to say, this is when I'll start learning how to use, for example, Envivo. This is when I'll start learning how to use SPSS, just to name a few. And this is my plan. Because again, you have to think about the audit trail. What does that look like? And also how you analyze your data. And if you speak to some professors, just find a mentor that will explain to you the game. Now, I was late to the game, but when I clocked onto the game, it's how I usually work in terms of corporate, right? Which is, everything can be done, but you need to know the game. And I'm not going to, you know, share the trade secret, but when I figured it out, I was like, sir, you know, it's doable. So be strategic, find a mentor, find somebody that you can speak to that will be able to share the trade secrets, because once you know them, your life changes and you realize that there's nothing impossible, that anything can be done, essentially. And I know some people will say, you know, my work ethic, I don't do 12 hours, I don't do 14 hours. Well, again, when you've got your project plan and you plan ahead, and you want to know information that will help you in your career in the next 10 to 20 years, it will be a sacrifice for the next 4 years or 3 years or 1 year. Essentially, that will benefit you long term. So think of the big picture, as David Cameron said, you know, and they asked him, what is the big picture? it's the big picture. So you two think of the big picture. What is the big picture? Where do I see myself in 5 years? How much money do I want to earn? Who do I want to be? Do I want to make an impact in this industry? Or do you know what? I'm just content. That's it. I just want it because my parents said I should get it, right? Think of your motivation and then start to reflect that onto your project plan, and then find people that will guide you, and have a relationship with your supervisor. From the guests they've said this, on Ph.D. Hard Talk, to say, have that working relationship with your supervisor. But sometimes you don't know what your supervisor is thinking, and I think we all fall into that trap where you don't know if you're doing a good job or you're doing a bad job, and then you walk around in circles, you stress yourself out. But I think the biggest trend that we have at the moment is PhD done. It's better for you to hand it in and be finished than to be lingering, in the same spot. So help yourself by finding the support network that you need, and also by reading, speaking to people. It's just like basically when you're doing your sampling, by speaking to people, you hear bits and bobs of information, and then you can go back to qualify it with your supervisor before you start taking the next steps in terms of direction. But I always say relationships, they work on a two-way street. You have to respect each other, essentially. And if you don't communicate, the other person doesn't know what you're going through or what you're thinking. So essentially, one has to communicate effectively. So again, that's going back to your writing. If you don't read, how can you communicate effectively? Because you don't know anything. So you have to read the journals, read the books, right? Make sure that the brain knows stuff, right? Because again, to be challenged when you don't know, you'll be the one who'll be embarrassed. Do you want to be embarrassed? I don't think so. I don't think you want to be embarrassed when you're asked a question. And sometimes, I find sometimes you get confused with the questions. But I'm a person who's so quick to say no. So that shuts down that conversation. But then I'll go away and reflect and realize, actually, I didn't know that information, because if I did, they were right, which is not a good thing, actually. So it's good to know yourself and to know your strengths, your weaknesses. But again, when you say no as well, know why you say no, and if you say yes, know why you're saying yes. So the key things, sorry, it's turned into a rant, is basically time management. Manage your time wisely, albeit reading, communication, and also working on your project plan. It has to be precise, but also cater to life just happens. So you don't get depressed, you don't get stressed. You take it as it comes, and also you're strategic in terms of your decision making. And the second point is make sure that you're reading. And again, with reading, there's different ways of reading. Other people want to print out stuff and they go through it. Other people want to use AI, audio listening. That's your thing. You do it while you're jogging, while you're cycling, while you're swimming. Can you do that while you're swimming? I don't know. I don't swim much. I don't. But whatever works for you. But also, again, where the pauses are when someone's reading, that tells you that it's a full stop or a comma. Just pick up on the little things, because they will help you immensely in your second, third, and in your final year, and in your defense as well, whereby they may ask you a question and you'll be like, actually, I did read about it, I didn't think it relevant, but if I'm to publish in the future, this is something that I will add. So remember, during your first year, it's your time to ensure that the foundation is set, and also in terms of resilience, that you're building that muscle and you're working on your self-motivation, because it is a long journey and it can be stressful. But again, I always say, don't be so quick to make a decision. Take your time and make a well-informed decision before you do what you think is right, just based on the people around you. And some people like competition. So if you want to compete with your colleagues to say, I want to publish first, I want to do all of that, that is your flavor, then you do it, but also be mindful because you might burn yourself out if you're doing that. So run your own race basically is the guidance that I'll give you, and hopefully this video has been beneficial to somebody. If not 5, then 1 person. I'm happy with that, but this is just my quick 2 cents on what one should do during their first year, which is read and time management. So thank you again, and don't forget to subscribe to PhD Hard Talk, turn on your notifications and comment, like, subscribe, and share the videos. And also, if you want me to talk about something that you think is important, DM, and I will try and talk about it if I know anything about it. And if I don't, then I will ask somebody when they come on PhD Hard Talk just to ask for guidance in terms of that point. But yeah, thank you again for subscribing and for watching and for liking.